Thanks for listening to the Everything and Anything at a Bit Day podcast. I have a really amazing guest on today. Her name is Tanya Kach, and I have heard her story for a couple of years now. And I'm so thankful that she decided to come on and do an interview with me to tell her story herself. So, welcome to the show, Tanya.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
So, Tanya, at 14 years old, I'll give a 2-second history of it, but at 14 years old, basically was taken from her family. And I'll let you tell the story of what happened when you were 14 and when you were in school when you met this man.
Yes. Yeah, I was 14. My dad and I had just moved in with his new girlfriend into a whole different town. So I had to change school districts. And I started school in McKeesport. I was in eighth grade.
Okay.
And that's when I met Tom Hose. He was the head of security at the school.
Okay. And a much older guy, obviously. So you're
Yeah, he
14 and
was
he's how old is
38.
he? Yeah. Okay. 38. It's a big age difference.
Yes, very big. He just zoned in on me. As soon as he saw me as a new student and everything, he wanted to get to know me and about me, and he just latched on to me. But I was being bullied and a lot was going on. My parents were going through a divorce, and that's everything that Tom Hose found out about as well and preyed on that.
Yeah, exactly. He preyed on that exactly. And if he's seen you being bullied at school as the head of security, I'm sure he just, oh, I'll use that to lure her in, I would assume.
Right. That's exactly what he did, yeah. If something happened in school, if some girl came up and we got into a fight, he'd break it up, but he would tell me to be tough, and I wouldn't be the one going to the principal's office, it was the other girl,
Okay.
and he favored me in that way, and then he started giving me things like money, cigarettes,
Yep.
then it led to jewelry,
Okay.
things like that.
And so and from the little I've read, 'cause I was telling Tanya before we started this, I've purposely tried to stay away from this so I can hear the story directly from her. And, but the little I have read, he lived at home with his family, with his
Yeah.
father or mother or someone. Is that correct?
He lived with his parents, and his son lived with him.
Wow.
And his son was 2 years younger than me, so I was 14, he was 12.
Okay. And then how did he end up getting you? Tell me the story how he ended up getting you to his house. And how long was that? Like, how long was he almost, I'd say, courting you, giving you these gifts, giving you the money, being probably especially nice to you? How long did that take?
It took months. It took months for that. Like, I met him in September of 1995, and the day that I ran away was February 10th, 1996.
Okay.
So in that time period, he was grooming me, giving me things, and he kept telling me, "You don't deserve that life that you're having at home," because I had such a bad home life. He just kept saying, "I could take care of you better. You would be more happy with me." And that constantly hearing that, it
And being 14.
yes, being 14 and not feeling the love from home, but he actually cared and was showing me what I thought was love.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see where he completely took your mind over and just lured you in. So it's pretty easy probably to do that to a 14-year-old child too that's got a bad home life. So he's seen all the signs in order to do what he wanted to do. And then so in February of 1996, then you decided I'm leaving home, and that's whenever you went to his house?
Yeah, I went to his accomplice's house first, Judy Soap.
Okay.
Tom had mapped out everything for me to do, to how to run away, pack what I could. He gave me specific like orders and what streets to take once I left
Wow.
and alleyways and whatnot. And he even wrote down the directions to get to Judy's house. And she was on the porch waiting for me.
And then you
And
got to Judy's house, and then you just hid out there for a little while?
yes, I hid out there. Tom had came over there every day after work and I saw him, and then One day, CYS showed up at Judy's, but I was at Tom's house at the time. And when they showed up, she denied everything about me, but she went to Tom and said that there was a report of a runaway at her house, and she cut ties.
And how do you think that somebody found out? One of the neighbors saw you or something possibly, or uh,
That's what I'm thinking, yeah.
yeah. And did CYS go to Tom's house to see if you were there or no?
No, they didn't come to his house.
Okay.
No. One night, it was about a year, I was with Tom, the cops showed up, and they had a report from the neighbor of a possible runaway at Tom's house.
Okay.
And they showed up. Tom saw them outside and he grabbed me and he drug me down into the basement and told me to be quiet, don't say a word. And when I was down there, the cop came in and Tom was talking to him and he says, "We got this report. I'm just checking it out. Do you mind if I take a look around the house?" And that's when Tom was like, "Oh, please don't disturb my elderly parents I take
Mhm.
care of." And the cop was like, "Oh, you know what? Yeah, you're good. I'm sorry for bothering you." And he left.
Did you ever think like how your life could have been completely different if that cop actually would have found you that day? Like you would
Yeah.
have had a completely different outcome in your life, probably.
Yes, I would have.
And then, so the cop left. You continue living with Tom. From what I
Yes.
read, you were living upstairs, correct?
Yes, in his bedroom.
Okay. And you weren't allowed to leave. Is that correct as well? Like you weren't allowed to leave for
I
4 years or so?
Yes, 4 years I did not leave that house.
Wow.
Never stepping foot outside or anything. I spent 4 years of complete brainwashing by him
Mm,
and complete isolation that he had done to me, and I tried to leave a few times, but that's when he started threatening my life.
wow.
And then he also pulled the guilt trip too. "I would be nothing without you. I'll kill myself if you leave and it's on you." And I didn't know anything. Like, I thought that I could go to jail if he killed himself. N Not knowing that if somebody does that,
Yeah.
you don't go to jail for that, but that's somebody else's choice. But that's what he put into my head.
Yeah. When
Look
you're
at
a 14 or 15-year-old girl, you can easily be influenced by what this older person is
Yeah.
telling you.
Oh,
It probably,
yeah.
he's an adult. He's a person that you're like, "Oh, okay. He knows what he's talking about, so I'm not gonna do this."
Yeah, and he was the head of security at the school. He had a lot of recognition, and you think it was somebody that was, quote, unquote, "safe." He was.
So did you have feelings for him at all? Because he treated you well in the beginning, he was giving you gifts, he was giving you money, he was showing that he cared about you in a lot of ways. So did you end
I
up
did.
developing feelings for him?
Yes, I did. I thought that I loved him because he kept promising a future with us together, and then at one point, he proposed to me years into being held captive, and that was his way of keeping me.
And what was his 12-year-old son like? Did he wonder who you were? Did he ever have anything who was
Um,
this girl upstairs, and or was there
well,
little interaction with him because you were separated?
no, I had interaction with him. His name is Justin, and I had Tom told him how bad my home life was and that I was better off living there because I would be alive and taken care of. I had a roof over my head. He told Justin all of this, and Justin would never betray his dad. That's one thing. So Justin just went with it, and he was only 12. So
Yeah.
what's he to think?
Yeah. And what about Tom's parents? Did they just thought you were somebody that Tom was helping as well?
They didn't know I was there.
Wow.
They did not know I was there for years until Tom had introduced me to them years later when he came up with this story of me losing my job and, "Oh, I'm gonna move in and help around the house and help with his dad's health and everything." And it made things worse, to be honest with you. His mother despised me.
And are you in touch with Justin at all today? Do you have any idea? Okay, yeah, I didn't.
No, I have no idea where he's at, or I don't know, and I choose not to know.
Yeah. And then so you turned 18 and then you ended up getting a job in the neighborhood at a convenience store, is that correct?
Yeah, it was a local convenience store. It was 2 blocks up the street, and, Joe Sparico and his wife owned the store, and their daughter worked there, and I really got along with their daughter really well, and he hired me to stock shelves, and then eventually I was able to use the cash register and ring people out. It was it was a source of independence for me.
How was it leaving the house to be able to go to a job though? Like after so many years of being stuck in that bedroom, did you have a sense of relief? And were you also, oh wow, this is the real world. This is where maybe I deserve. Did those thoughts start going through your head?
Yes, they did. It took time, though. It took a lot of time because I kept seeing how Joe and his wife and his daughter and what a happy family they were and a happy marriage and everything. And when I'm seeing all of this, and my life is completely the opposite. And what I saw with them is what I wanted, that true love, that true compassion and everything.
And during the time that you were in Tom's house before he would let you out, he was not only just mentally abusing you, but he sexually abused you as well. And how about feeding you and those type of things? Was he giving you food? Can you walk me through what a day to day would be with him?
He would get up in the morning for work. He would wake up around 4, and he before he would get a shower, get ready, he always had to have sex. That was the morning routine he woke me up for. And then he would go and get ready for work, and he would leave. And a day in the life there was I had 1 drawer of clothes, and I kept folding and refolding them. That was the start of my OCD. And in the movie, they do show that, and it shows that's how my OCD started. That's the only control I had in my life. Everything else was all him telling me what, when, where, how.
Yeah, and whenever he left, did you ever think, let me try to escape? Or he just had you so brainwashed that you're like about the killing himself and all those other things, like you just like, it's better to stay.
Yeah, it was better to just stay. That's was my thought, yes.
And what were your parents doing as you were gone? Were there missing poster pictures around town? Did anybody look for you?
No.
Really?
My dad didn't report me missing until 4 days after I was gone.
Oh, no. Now I see why you
Yeah.
wanted to get out of the house. He didn't. Wow.
He didn't care. He did not care, and my mother, I can't blame her at all, she wasn't in my life. My mom has a lot of mental problems, and she was committed a couple times whenever I was a kid, and she lost her parental rights. She was a paranoid schizophrenic.
Okay. And you had a stepmother also that you were living with that was your father's wife,
Yeah, girlfriend then became wife, yes.
and she didn't care either, right? She didn't try to do anything to find you or
Mm-mm.
anything?
No, not at all. She even said in one interview, years later, the problem was gone. I was happy she was gone. The problem was gone.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, she said that on TV in an interview years later after I was rescued.
Oh my god, I'm so
My
sorry.
dad and my stepmom blame me for what happened.
You were a 14-year-old girl, how can they blame you? That's insane.
Oh, my father threw in my face, "You knew what you were doing. You know what you're doing at 14." And I'm like, "Nobody knows what they're doing at 14."
No.
I even said to my dad, "You didn't even know what you were doing at 14." And he threw in my face, "Yes, I did." Real cocky, real arrogant. I have not spoken to my father in over a decade
Okay.
because it was just too toxic for him to be in my life and constantly blaming me for what happened to me.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. So once you got into the store and you started working for this guy and his wife and you became friends with his
Yeah.
daughter, did you end up telling his daughter like, "Hey, I'm at this guy's house." Did you share the story with her or with the
I
store owner?
was the store owner, I did. Because Joe kept he took me under his wing like another daughter, and he knew something was just not right. You're with this older man, you jump whenever he calls, you gotta do everything that he says. And he says, "There's just something not right about this whole situation." He goes, "And you don't know where your parents are, you have no family." And it really got to me, and I broke down.
Yeah.
And I told Joe who I was and what was going on and how long I had been with Tom, and it was 10 years at that point.
And then Joe decided, "Let's call the cops."
Yes. I told him I was on the National Missing and Exploited Children's website because Tom read the paper every day,
Okay.
and there was an article in there when another girl in McKeesport was found deceased. And they mentioned me in the article
Mm.
because it was missing. And they said that my case was turned over to the missing and exploited children's to them. And that's the only way I knew. And that's what I told Joe. And Joe, he was like, "What do you have to do that day?" That I told him. And I told him what I had to do. I had to go and get stuff for Tom at a store and go back and clean. And I had chores. Tom gave me chores. And I always had to be home by 3:25 because if I was not home by 3:25, I got reamed out by Tom.
Was he physically abusive as well?
Only during sex.
Okay.
And that's how he got his frustrations out. He'd be like, "Get up in that bed." And then he would start but that's how he got his rage out that
Wow,
way.
that's crazy. And do you know if was there any other girls from the school that he was doing things with or trying to lure in as well, or were you the only one?
I was the only one. There was another girl before he met me, Carly Ann. She was blonde hair and everything that he was talking to her. But as soon as he met me, he stopped talking to her.
And whenever so Joe ends up calling the police for you or calling the authorities for you, and
Yes.
and then they come to the store when you're there and you
No, I went back to the house
okay,
and I did everything that I had to do.
okay,
And I always had to be in my PJs by the time Tom walked through that door at 3:30. And I had my PJs on, and I knew what was coming. And I had a split second where I was sitting in the kitchen in the chair and I had my head in my hands. And that's when Tom looked at me. He was getting a cup of tea and he was getting the newspaper to go upstairs and read it. And he called me Kitty. Kitty was my nickname from him.
okay.
And he said to me at that moment, "What's wrong, Kitty?" And it was at that split moment that I was going to look at him and tell him it's over. But then I remembered I was sitting next to the knife drawer. And I just said, "Oh, nothing." And I just stayed downstairs and I went into the living room and I was waiting for them. And then his mother was going to make dinner. And she says, "Oh, you're not going to cook, are you?" And I "No, are you gonna eat?" And I said, and this was out of the ordinary. I said, "No." And I was afraid that Tom might have heard that, but luckily he didn't, because if he would have heard me say no, he would have been downstairs questioning.
Yeah.
So he didn't hear that. And she went into the kitchen to make dinner, and I sat in the living room. His dad was upstairs taking a nap, and his son was upstairs taking a nap as well. And I just sat in the living room and I thought it would be like the movies where I'd hear all these whistles and sirens
Yeah.
but the next thing I know, there's a detective on the porch looking through the front window like this. And I jump up and I open the door and the detective looks at me and he goes, "Are you Tanya Nicole Cash?" And I just collapsed into his arms and I said, "Yes, I am." And they said, "Where is he? Where is he?" And then I see all the other cops coming into the house. And then I see out the door that the street was lined up with cop cars, actually. They rolled in silent.
Wow.
And I told them he was upstairs reading the paper. And they said, "Does he have any weapons?" And I said, "No, he doesn't own a gun or anything." And they went upstairs with their guns drawn and dragged him downstairs. And Tom came into the living room where I'm standing there, and he was playing stupid, and he was like, "What's going on, kitty? What's happening here?" Thinking I was gonna defend him.
Yeah.
And it was at that moment I looked at him and I said, "It's over. It's over. I know what you did to me all these years."
Yeah.
And that's when the detective was like, "Let's get you out of here." And all he kept saying to me, what Tom was, "Can I talk to her? Can I say something to her?" And the cops were telling him to shut up. And I walk out the door, and then Tom leans back and he screamed at me, "Judas," because I betrayed him.
Yeah.
And that, me being a Christian, that really hit me.
Yeah. And then so he was taken away. Where did you go after that? Were you taken back to your father's house or what happened?
I went to the police station, and they were trying to get a hold of my mom and my dad.
Okay.
My mom had remarried, so she had a different last name that they didn't know, so they couldn't find my mom. They found my dad, and then my dad and his at that point, wife showed up at the police station to come and get me. That's when I saw my dad for the first time in 10 years. And even whenever I collapsed into his arms at the police station, "Oh, dad," my dad still said to me, he goes, "Why did you leave? Why'd you do it?" Right then and there at the police station too.
And you ended up having to go home with him, right? Because there was nowhere else for you
Yeah,
to go at that point. Because
we
you,
had nowhere else to go.
yeah. And then how did you end up finally being able to get out of your father's house and start your own life? What was the time period for that?
I stayed at my father's house for about 8 months.
Okay.
Things were, slowly at first getting worse, and then they just progressed to getting even more worse. And my mom, I was in touch with my mom, and my mom and I went through, whenever we were reunited, we went through some very major therapy. And they offered that same therapy for my dad, and he refused. But my mother was all for it to fix our relationship and get things back.
And how is your relationship with your mother today?
Oh, it's great. I'm very close to my
That's
mom.
amazing. I'm so glad to hear
Yeah.
that. That's great.
Yeah. My mom and I are very close. But it was my mom and her then husband, my stepdad. Unfortunately, he has passed away now. At the time, they were like, "Just come move in with us. Bring your cat." I had a cat. They said, "Bring your cat and just move in with us. You can't take any more with this with your father."
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I did. I packed what I could in my car. I didn't even have a cat carrier. I just put my cat in the car, and I packed what I could, and I went straight to my mom's.
Is that the last time you spoke to your father? You haven't spoken to him since then?
You know, I haven't spoken to him since then.
And then
Because
whenever
I'm sorry, because I called him. My dad was at work, and I called him and I said, "I'm moving out. I am moving in with mom. I can't do this anymore." And he just went, "Oh,
wow, that's doesn't sound like a great father.
it's no."
Yeah. And then whenever Tom had to go obviously in front of a judge and go through a trial, I'm assuming,
Yeah.
did you have to be a part of all that? Or did you have to actually be in the courtroom with him?
I was in the courtroom with him for the preliminary hearing so they could officially press charges on him.
Okay.
And I had to get up and testify to everything that he had done to me. I was asked questions by the district attorney and then cross-examined by his attorney. And I had to tell some very personal things on the stand that I had to go into graphic detail so they could charge him. And that was hard in a room full of people that some my family was there, like my mom and My grandparents flew in from Alaska and my cousin, and they were all there. But then it was a room full of strangers and reporters from the news. And it was very hard going into detail about things in front of all those people. And luckily, I had a advocate. They assigned me an advocate from the Center for Victims whenever I first came home, and she's wonderful. And I still keep in touch with her today. But I remember I was so nervous on the stand testifying because Tom would not take his eyes off of me at all. He would not stop staring at me, and it made me so uncomfortable that I what I did was I pulled all of my acrylic nails off of my fingers up on that stand.
Yeah.
And I got down from the stand and I went to Geraldine, my advocate, and she's, "You did great," and everything. And she happens to look down and she goes, "Where's your nails?" And I just pointed at the stand and I said, "They're up there."
Oh, that's so I feel so bad that you had to go through that. And he got 15 years sentence, is that
He
correct?
he got 5 to 15.
Okay.
It was it officially 5 years. I could rest easy, that he was in jail, but then after that, he was up for parole almost every year. And I had to write the parole board, and I also asked for help on my Facebook from people to write into the parole board on why he shouldn't get out. He should serve the full 15.
Okay.
And so many people wrote in, and I love everybody for that. And it did keep him in for the full 15. So
Oh,
I am
awesome.
sure of that.
And he got out in 2002, and has he tried to contact you at all?
He got out in 2022.
Yeah, 2022, I'm sorry, yeah, 2022, and has he tried to contact you or anything?
Mm, no, not at all.
Okay. And whenever he got let out, were you a bit nervous that he would come after you or try to find you, or because he was, I'm sure, had some bad feelings about you, turning against him and stuff in his own head, so
Yeah,
how have you felt about that?
I was really nervous about him coming after me, but he hasn't, and there's been no contact. He hasn't tried or anything, which is great. I just want him to live under a rock somewhere
Yeah,
and die.
yeah.
Sorry, that's just how I feel.
Yeah, I think you have every right to feel that way too after what he did to you. And maybe after the 15 years, he learned the lesson. Like maybe that's why he had.
No,
You don't think so?
no, because it wasn't until the last like couple years he was in prison that he actually finished the sex offender classes because he kept refusing to take them because that's mandatory when you're in jail for that.
Okay. Wow. Okay. And so you have been in contact with some people and you have written a book. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
the name of your book is Memoir of a Milk Carton Kid.
Yes, I have it right here. Here's the cover.
Awesome. And I see that it's available on Amazon. And is it probably at every bookstore, right? That sells books?
The only place I've seen is Amazon.
Okay, it's definitely on Amazon because I'm
Mm.
ordering it today myself, and I can't wait to get it and read it.
Right.
And then they've made a movie about you as well, right?
Yes, they did. Elizabeth Smart contacted me,
Okay, tell me
and
about that.
it was wonderful. She contacted me through Instagram, and I couldn't believe the message I was reading, and I had to make sure it was officially her
Yeah.
because I was afraid someone was pulling a very nasty prank on me. But I found out it was truly her, and we started talking, and we exchanged numbers, and we talked on the phone, and it was great being a part of that project with the movie and with her. And then I had a sit down interview with her, and I got to meet her in person, and
That's
that
amazing.
meant so much to me to meet someone that completely understands what I went through, and I understand what she went through.
Yeah, that's amazing that you have that connection.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's a
I'm
dear
sure it was
friend of mine.
I'm sure it was very therapeutic to hear somebody else that knows how you actually feel instead of you're just telling the story and listening like they went through a similar situation. So that's amazing. And are you doing anything today to help other people, or do you if people are reaching out to you with anything, are you sounds like you're active on Facebook and you appreciate the messages, so when people are reaching out to you, do you get messages like that from people saying, "Hey, I've gone through something similar," or "My life isn't great and you're an inspiration"? Because I feel like you would be a great
Yeah.
inspiration to a lot of people.
I get messages every day
That's amazing.
from different people telling me what they had went through, and they're opening up to me, which I feel so humble about that they feel that they can open up to me. And I write them back, and we end up having a really great conversation.
That's amazing. I have to say, Tanya, you are such a strong woman, and I you should be so proud of yourself for having such an accomplishment in your life and being where you are today. Because you're married today, correct?
Yes, I am.
And you seem like from what I read, you have a more of a normal life now than what you could have ended up having living in Tom's house. And you should just you're an inspiration, I think, to a lot of people that have gone through sexual and mental abuse, and you should just be very proud of yourself, I think, for being such a strong person and helping other people like that.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all I want to do is help others. After this happened to me, I thought to myself, why be mad at the world? There's no reason to be mad at the world. It's not the world's fault. It's his fault for what he had done to me.
Yeah,
I just ran across a very evil person in my life.
yeah,
But getting through all of that, I'm not going to lie, it was a struggle, but my faith grew stronger through all of that as well.
yeah. And I'm really happy to hear that you and your mom have a good relationship because
Oh, yeah.
that's if anything, that was a huge plus that you got out of all this, having her there to
Yeah.
support you, and probably you became much closer because of this, it sounds
Yeah.
again, Tanya's book is Memoir of a Milk Carton Kid. It is on Amazon. Go order it today. I think Tanya has a fascinating story, and I'm excited to read about it, and I really thank you for being on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
You've been a great guest. Thanks, everybody. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast, and we will talk to you next week.